Shaq said, yo, man, I'm sick of him, man. Yo, I'm real talk, B. I'm so sick of this, man. He come over every week trying to sell me something. I'm tired of it.
Bill Bellamy has reappeared, and within minutes, the mood on social media shifted. He didn't return because of a new role, nor because of a playful mic drop moment like the MTV Jams era. He spoke plainly, as if he had been holding it in for 30 years, finally deciding to pull the pin. The man who put booty call into the pop culture dictionary. The man who electrified the 90s with a confident smile and storytelling as smooth as an R&B track. The man audiences assumed had lived a career filled only with bright lights and laughter. But behind that glow, Bill hid a layer of truth entirely different, darker, rougher, and strangely enough, exactly what many had suspected, but never dared to say out loud. No circling around it, no softening. This time he lays everything on the table. So what exactly did Bill Bellamy just confess? And why is it troubling enough to make all of Hollywood freeze in place? From Newark to the spotlight. To understand why the cuts in Bill Bellamy's career hurt as deeply as they did, we have to go back to where it all began. A Newark of the 1960s, 1970s, where sirens were more familiar than birdsong, where poverty, racial discrimination, and street violence were things children grew up with as if they were simply natural parts of their environment. Newark then was not a place you stepped outside to chase a dream. It was a place where getting home safely after a day out was already considered lucky. Within that backdrop, Bill Bellamy, born April 7, 1965, grew up carrying the weight of responsibility. As the eldest child, he understood early that he had to lead the way. What made his story remarkable, however, was that despite their modest means, Bill's parents tried to place him in the best educational environment they could reach. He attended Seton Hall Preparatory School, one of New Jersey's most prestigious private high schools. In a place where many families struggled just to keep the electricity on, Bill was put on another path, a path of learning discipline and a brighter future. He later enrolled at Rutgers University, majoring in economics. Everything seemed mapped out: a well-mannered son, strong academic record, a sturdy degree, a stable office job, a house, a family, a life of safety. But what Bill didn't tell his family, and perhaps couldn't tell at the time, was that every night after his proper hours of study, he would slip out drive to tiny clubs, some with only a few dozen seats, dim amber lights, and the lingering smell of old beer and smoke seeping from brick walls. There he tried something he would remember for the rest of his life, standing in front of strangers and making them laugh. Something in that laughter made Bill feel more alive than any lecture hall ever could. No syllabus, no grades, no exams. Just him and the audience. When they laughed, he could breathe. When they went silent, he felt he had to be better. That was what made Bill addicted to the stage, a kind of addiction that doesn't destroy your life, but destroys your tolerance for mediocrity. Before long, the small bar stages of New Jersey were no longer enough. Bill began taking risks driving into New York, the heart of American performance art. He stepped onto the stage of the Improv, appeared at the comic strip, and slowly squeezed his way into the Comedy Store, the temple of black stand-up, where every major name had once stood before becoming famous. It sounds like a movie, but Bill had no one backing him. No manager, no financial support, no doors opened for him. He wrote his own jokes, performed them, found his own gigs, and pushed through countless nights of failure shows where the audience didn't laugh. Punchlines that died mid-air nights when he had to drive home in silence, wondering if he truly belonged in this profession. Then the turning point arrived faster than he expected. A producer from HBO noticed him. They made no promises, just one offer. "Do you want to try Def Comedy Jam?" And Bill knew this was the fight of his life. Def Comedy Jam was not a regular comedy show. It was the platform that put black comedians on the national map. To stand on that stage meant you had triumphed over thousands who only wished for a single chance. And Bill stepped out wearing an oversized shirt, a mischievous smile, and an energy that pulled the entire room toward him. On that very stage, with just one line, he created the defining moment of his career booty call. The crowd exploded. Not just because of the joke, but because of the way Bill told it. Clear, bold, sexy, without being vulgar, playful, yet clever. No one knew that phrase would become part of American culture, spreading into film, music, TV, even everyday conversations. That is why when Bill later told the story of being humiliated at a Def Jam party, Uninvited, unrecognized, ignored. It wasn't just a bad night. It was the night Bill stood on the outside of the very place where he had created the spotlight. That is why the shock hurt. That is why it became fuel. And that is why at 60, when Bill recalls it, his voice no longer laughs, it sinks as though touching a wound that never healed. Because to understand the bad truths he is about to reveal, you must first understand where he began, what he fought through, and why he has never forgotten the looks of dismissal he received all those years ago. Reveal number 1. The Def Jam. Humiliation. The story Bill Bellamy tells at age 60 is not a humorous moment, not a cheerful behind-the-scenes anecdote meant to be laughed away. It is a night he calls by name, one of the most embarrassing nights of my life. And when Bill says that line, you can hear something in his voice. Break. Picture that moment, the 1990s, when Def Jam was the center of hip-hop culture. They were not just a record label. They were a kingdom, a place every black artist from rappers to comedians longed to enter to feel they truly belonged. For Bill, the man who had just created the phrase booty call that was spreading across America being invited to Def Jam's Christmas party, was a sign he was becoming part of a world he had admired from afar. He dressed neatly, walked toward the door, heart pounding, ready to blend into a room full of legends. And then, what happened cut into him like a cold blade. The doorman looked at the list, flipped a few lines, looked up, said, "You're not on here." Bill thought they were mistaken. Impossible. He had performed on Def Comedy Jam. He had just coined a viral phrase expected to become a milestone of contemporary culture. MTV was taking notice. He wasn't some nobody just starting out. He had status. He had buzz. At least, that's what he believed. But to the doorman that night, he was just an unfamiliar face. And then, as if to rub salt into the wound, the people behind him were allowed in immediately. No checking, no questions. Jay-Z walked past light as a breeze. Mary J. Blige entered, her whole entourage following. LL Cool J didn't have to pause for a second. Their names flew out of the doorman's mouth like pre-programmed VIP codes. And Bill Bellamy, the man who had been standing there minutes earlier, the man who had made all of America laugh with Booty Call, the man who had appeared on the HBO stage. He was kept outside, like someone trying to sneak into a party not meant for him. Bill recalls that moment not to seek pity. He speaks of it with cold, blunt honesty. "I almost didn't get in. I felt humiliated. Truly, one of the most embarrassing nights of my life." But this wasn't just hurt feelings. It was the collapse of an illusion. For years, Bill believed he was slowly entering the temple of black showbiz, Def Jam, hip-hop culture, urban entertainment. But that night, reality hit him in the face. They didn't know him. They didn't notice him. They didn't see him as one of them. And what made the wound deeper was the brutal contrast, the very Def Comedy Jam stage that had made Bill shine, the very cultural empire he thought he belonged to, pushed him aside on the same night the people he admired walked in like magnets of attention. If you've ever been pushed out of a group you believed you belonged to, you'll know that feeling. But multiply that pain tenfold. Then place it in the heart of a young artist trying to prove himself. That night, Bill was forced to face the truth. He was still just a foundation, a shadow, a name beneath the radar, even when that very stage had captured his footprint. He says he stood by the door, forcing a smile, trying to appear composed, but inside he felt like he was burning. When they wouldn't let me in, he said, "I felt like I was nobody." A cold, sharp line heavy with weight. But this is what gives the story its true power. That humiliating night became the fuel for Bill Bellamy's entire career. When he walked away from that party door, Bill wasn't just angry. He made a vow. A simple vow, but so powerful. He remembers it to this day. "There will never be another day in my life where people don't know who I am." And he meant it. From that day on, Bill no longer performed like a young man seeking a chance. He performed like someone seeking revenge, like someone determined to prove every underestimating eye wrong, like someone shoved out of heaven and set on building his own. He took more shows, wrote more, crushed every stage he stepped on, not content to simply stand in the room, but determined to be the one the entire room rose for. That is why Booty Call was never just a joke. It was the result of a vow. Reveal number 2, the truth behind Booty Call. If the humiliation outside the Def Jam Christmas party was the fire that scorched Bill Bellamy's pride, then Booty Call was the flame that placed him on the American cultural map. But behind what seems like a simple joke lay a 3-decade-long dispute, a frustration that simmered in Bill for years, a truth he only dared to speak plainly at age 60. And when he finally said it, you understood why his voice tightened the way it did. Bill did not circle around it. He didn't soften it. He didn't dodge it. He looked straight into the camera and said firmly, "I wrote it. I said it first." This wasn't a punchline. It was a declaration of ownership. For more than 30 years since Booty Call first echoed on Def Comedy Jam in 1992, Bill has had to hear countless rumors, fabricated stories, and people intentionally or not giving someone else credit. Some claimed it was slang from Atlanta. Others insisted it existed in hip-hop in the 80s. There were even long forum essays arguing that Bill merely popularized it, not created it. But the truth, according to Bill himself, was entirely different. He remembers exactly when it was born, a small scrap of paper backstage at the Uptown Comedy Club. Bill wrote down the phrase "booty call," thinking about how guys phoned girls late at night, the sudden meetups, the youthful rush of desire compressed into 2 words that were sexy, funny, mischievous, and real. When he brought it on stage, he never expected it to explode. He simply wanted to test the audience's reaction. The reaction exceeded every expectation. The room erupted in laughter. The MC slapped his hand. The crowd screamed. And within weeks, the phrase had escaped the club walls. It appeared in barbershops, in high school hallways, in college dorms, in underground tracks, then MTV, then radio. Booty Call became part of how Americans talked about love, desire, risk, and those 2 a.m. calls both people knew the meaning of. When Bill looks back, he doesn't smile. He drops a line that surprises everyone. "People still don't know, it came from me. I said it first. I wrote it first. That's the truth." That truth has not always been easy to say. For Bill, being robbed of credit wasn't just about slang, it was about legacy. An artist lives on ideas. A comedian lives on moments of eruption. Every joke is a small achievement. Every creation a personal imprint. And Booty Call was the defining imprint of his career, the moment that made all of America know the name Bill Bellamy. To grasp the scale of its impact, look at American culture from 1992 to now. Over 30 TV shows have used the term booty call. Sitcoms like Friends, Martin Fresh Prince, and Living Single all featured it in episodes or dialogue. Movies, too many to count. The number of hip-hop, R&B, and pop songs containing Booty Call or its variations exceeds the hundreds. A whole movie titled Booty Call 1997, starring Jamie Foxx and Vivica A. Fox, became a romantic comedy icon of the 90s. Slang became mainstream. Mainstream became dictionary. Dictionary became dating culture. Dating culture became Gen Z smartphone slang. 30 years later, Americans still use it in everyday speech. But the bitter part for Bill wasn't that the phrase became popular. It was that people began forgetting the origin. Some said Bill borrowed it, some insisted it existed in the community first. Others even pointed to false evidence to deny his contribution. One time, Bill was directly asked, "Are you sure you made it up? I heard someone say it came from..." Bill laughed, but his eyes dimmed. And now, at 60, he finally admits, "Those rumors bothered me for years. Not because I want to own everything, but because I want the truth to be respected." To him, Booty Call wasn't a joke. It was the product of observation of urban life, of the cultural fragments he witnessed growing up in Newark. It was the result of hundreds of nights on stage, testing, failing, refining, then triumphing. It proved Bill was not just the handsome guy on MTV, but a truly creative artist who could read culture faster than anyone else of his era. When Bill explains why he stayed silent for decades, he answers with one sentence that freezes every debate. "I didn't say anything because I thought it would explain itself. But then I realized, if you don't protect your legacy, someone will come along and take it." But the interesting part is this. Even after Bill spoke the truth, he left a lingering question for the audience. A question that makes people think harder than before. If Booty Call, the most iconic creation of his career, was disputed for so long, how many other things in Bill Bellamy's life have been distorted, hidden, or misunderstood? And that very question leads us to the next reveals, the ones Bill never dared speak until now. Reveal number 3: Hollywood's backstage is not as pretty as we think. If Booty Call showed that a part of Bill Bellamy's legacy had been stolen, then this next story proves something even harsher. Hollywood is not glamorous, polite, or professional, the way the posters make it seem. Behind the smiles, the lights, and the perfectly color-graded frames is a world full of testosterone, ego, and explosions so sudden that even Bill, a man who had spent years surviving the chaos of comedy stages, was left frozen. The story happened on the set of Any Given Sunday, 1999. The iconic sports drama packed with an all-star cast: Al Pacino, Cameron Diaz, Jamie Foxx, LL Cool, J. Dennis Quaid. And standing amid that chaos was Bill Bellamy, then a rising actor taking on heavier supporting roles. That day, the crew was filming a stadium scene, hundreds of extras gathered cameras, sweeping sound-syncing actors getting into character. There was no warning of what was coming. No one could have predicted the explosion that would erupt right in front of the lens. But suddenly, beneath the crowd, noised the director's instructions and the sound of cleats hitting turf. A verbal clash ignited between two superstars, LL Cool J and Jamie Foxx. At first, it was just a few sharp remarks, the kind of trash talk common in hip-hop sports, and yes, Hollywood. But within seconds, the atmosphere shifted. LL Cool J's voice dropped. Jamie Foxx looked back with eyes that were no longer acting. People around them began to sense something was wrong. Then before anyone could intervene, bam. LL Cool J swung first. Jamie Foxx countered on instinct. The impact rang out so clearly that Bill said he felt like he was watching two Transformers collide. This was not acting. This was real. In the middle of that chaos, Bill stood just a few steps away. And his first reaction wasn't to break it up, wasn't to shout, it was to forget every line he had. "I froze like a statue," Bill recalled. "I thought I would never get my lines back." He wasn't joking. One punch from LL Cool J not only sent Jamie Foxx backward, it knocked Bill completely out of his performance rhythm. But what makes this story a true reveal isn't simply the punch between two stars. It's the truth behind it. Hollywood often runs on ego, not artistry. The people you see smiling on TV, laughing in talk shows, posing at red carpets. In reality, many of them are one insult away from throwing fists on a multi-million-dollar film set. And here's the real twist: none of them is considered wrong the way the public imagines. Behind the curtain, they are men competing, defending themselves, protecting pride literally with their fists. Bill called that moment a lesson in the dark side of Hollywood masculinity. A place where the egos are so massive, no one wants to back down, where the roles may be fake. But the rage is always real. And where a comedian like Bill was forced to witness a truth, no one warns newcomers about Hollywood is not family, not brotherhood, not a cozy circle of artists embracing after the scene wraps. Hollywood is a place where if you stand in the wrong spot, at the exact wrong moment, when two superstars lose it, you might lose a tooth, or lose your chance to appear in the next shot. When Bill recounted this moment on Drink Champs, the hosts burst out laughing. But Bill didn't laugh along. He emphasized that this was the moment he realized acting is never safe and never clean. There are things Hollywood never wants the public to know. Things that never make it into DVD bonus features, never appear in magazines, never get mentioned by PR teams. But they happen most often when the cameras stop rolling, or sometimes right in the middle of the take. Reveal number 4: Cancel culture and the post-Janet Jackson clamp down. Bill is not the type of artist who complains. But when the topic turns to cancel culture, the wave of public erasure sweeping across Hollywood from comedy stages to social media, he stops choosing his words carefully. He says that back then, when he first did stand-up, artists were allowed to make mistakes, to experiment, to burn through boundaries, to discover new ones. But now, one joke that rubs someone the wrong way on Twitter, one 10-second clip cut out of context, and an entire reputation can vanish. People are overly sensitive, Bill says. Whatever you post, they scream, "Oh my God, how dare you say that?" In his voice is the exhaustion of someone who has witnessed a change that is both too deep and too fast. When Bill first rose to fame, Def Comedy Jam was the place where comedians were allowed to be bold, talking about sex, politics, race, society. Audiences came to hear truth, sometimes raw, sometimes messy. But the modern generation wants every sentence filtered, wants artists to be safe, as though stand-up comedy were a speech requiring official approval. Then Bill brings up the event that changed the entire American entertainment industry, the Janet Jackson Super Bowl scandal in 2004, a wardrobe malfunction lasting mere fractions of a second, yet one that shook media politics and broadcast standards. Bill recalls that time as a whirlwind. The whole world had gone crazy, he says. They wouldn't allow any bad words. I had to sign paperwork just to be interviewed. Yes, a comedian, a man whose entire career depends on language, was required to sign a no dirty words agreement, no profanity, no sensitive topics, no suggestive jokes, not even slang. Radio stations warned him, if you slip up with one wrong word, we pay the price, not you. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It revealed something deeper fear had become part of the job. When a comedian has to read a contract before speaking, the creative freedom, the soul of the art is suffocated. And Bill, who grew up in the rawest, purest stand-up environment, could not hide his frustration. But what makes this a bad reveal, as Bill calls it, isn't only cancel culture or censorship. It's that black artists suffer more than anyone else. He speaks plainly in showbiz. Black entertainers are scrutinized harder, judged harsher, watched more closely. Hollywood's own history proves it. Small scandals involving white artists often get softened or dismissed, while identical mistakes by black performers become national moral crises. To Bill, the Janet Jackson scandal is the perfect example. Janet was vilified. Her career suffered for years. Justin Timberlake standing on the same stage was barely touched. And Bill witnessed how that shift seeped into comedy. One mistake by a black star can make all of us pay. When he tells the story of being forced to sign that agreement, you can hear the bitterness in his voice, a comedian who built his career on words, now having to dim his own voice to fit an industry gripped by fear. For someone who once exploded on Def Comedy Jam, the least censored comedy stage in American history, it is a painful irony. And the more frightening part, cancel culture doesn't just punish the past, it threatens the future. Bill says it outright. Young comedians aren't brave enough to tell the truth anymore. Every joke must be measured, every topic softened, every risk avoided from afar. And when comedy loses its courage, it loses its soul. Reveal number 5. Bill Cosby. Through Bill Bellamy's eyes. When Bill Bellamy begins speaking about Bill Cosby, the atmosphere in the room drops by a beat. You can feel it instantly. This is not a topic most artists want to touch, and it is certainly not a story Hollywood encourages anyone to dig into. But Bill chooses honesty, and that honesty is compelling in its own unique way, not because it is bold for shock value, but because it comes from someone who has lived long enough in the industry to understand that even legends have their shadows. Bill says Cosby was once an almost perfect role model. For generations of black performers, Cosby wasn't just a star. He was proof that a black entertainer could lead American television. The Cosby Show reached as high as 30 million viewers each week, a number nearly impossible to achieve even in the age of the internet. So when the scandal broke, the shock was powerful enough to feel like it shook the childhood memories of an entire generation. But then Bill shares a detail that makes listeners pause. Everything erupted right when Cosby was closer than ever to buying NBC a deal that could have shifted the balance of power in the American entertainment industry. Bill does not say the events were connected. He does not make any accusations. But his tone, the slight pause, the way he looks down for a second before saying, right when he was about to buy NBC, all of it is enough for viewers to understand that Bill is touching on something veteran black entertainers have whispered about for years. Hollywood has games outsiders never get to see. The power of this moment isn't in the content alone, but in the emotional graph Bill creates. Earlier, we heard about his humiliation at Def Jam, about having his booty call credit taken, about watching LL Cool J throw real punches at Jamie Foxx on set. But here, Bill reveals another layer entirely, the layer of doubts, unspoken fears, and unanswered questions that black performers often carry in their hearts. He describes Cosby as a massive cultural pillar, then almost immediately touches on the deepest fear that the career of a black entertainer, no matter how monumental, can be wiped out in a moment they do not control. And Bill delivers this with calmness, never forcing the audience to think a certain way. He simply leaves space. and it is this space that grips viewers the most. Many American audiences, especially those who followed the entertainment world in the 80s and 90s, know the NBC acquisition was once a backstage story that shook the industry. A black artist owning a major network like NBC, it would not only shatter ceilings, it could usher in an entirely new era. And then within months, everything collapsed. Bill does not claim anything definitive, but he leaves behind one lingering question. Was it all just coincidence? That question does not need an answer. Its power comes from simply existing. And that is why this reveal has become one of the most replayed moments in analyses about Bill Bellamy. Not because of drama, but because Bill shares the raw, quiet emotion of an artist who has witnessed too many falls in the industry to believe in pure coincidence. And for the audience, this is exactly why they stay, because they know that if Bill dares to open a door this dark, what lies behind the next one might be even more fascinating. He doesn't hold anything back at 60. Bill Bellamy speaks plainly, truthfully, like a man who has lived long enough to stop worrying about pleasing anyone. His children are grown. His career is solid enough that no one can cancel him or shove him back into the MTV mold of his youth. And most importantly, Bill knows that if he doesn't tell the story now, no one will ever tell it correctly. He admits that the bad hinted in the title isn't about personal scandal. It's about the ugly truths Hollywood has always tried to hide. How black artists were treated like temporary guests in a billion-dollar industry. How they were censored, sidelined, ignored, even while standing at their peak. Bill chooses to speak not to accuse, but because he feels responsible for putting an end mark on the stories that wounded him for 3 decades. This is the voice of a man who has lived through the full circle of life and finally refuses to live in silence any longer.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore. Stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.